Let's go now. A little life out here. What the hell's going on out here?
It's a lot of fun. Keep it fun.
Hello everybody, welcome to the UK Packers podcast. As usual, I'm your host at the Diddy NFL on Twitter, and of course follow the group at UK Packers. And it's been a while since I've had a heavyweight guest on. And I know I say this every time I get a sort of heavyweight journalist guest on, but dear God, we've hit the holy grail in this one. It's Jason Wilde, or Jason Wilde. This is the questions that I'm going to put to you first. Jason, first off, thank you very much for taking the time coming on. How are you today?
I don't know. Heavyweight, is that a fat joke? Because it certainly can't be my career.
It is the career. We know full well of your work, your long form pieces. You've been covering the Packers now for let's put it this way, you've been covering the Packers for longer than Kenny Clark has been alive. Darnell Savage Jr. was a twinkle in his father's eye by the time you were covering the Packers. And am I right in saying that it's all the way back in 1996 or before that you've professionally been covering the Packers and picked up a host of awards since then, Jason? So I don't think you can use the modest card. And no, I'm not calling you fat. And yes, you are a heavyweight, if I can say that much. But listen, I'm going to get at you straight away, right? I'm going to put the first test to you, and it's the first test that I give people. Now, I've already name-dropped Kenny Clark when I had him on the podcast, right? And I've even done this to him. He has a second name called Clark. So I went there and asked him, did he have any Irish? Now, Mark Murphy was on, and his second name's Murphy. And look at his hair. So needless to say, he had Irish heritage. Larry McCarron was on, and I asked Larry how Irish he was, and he told a story how he went on to heritage.com or one of these websites and got kind of, the family DNA test. Yeah. And he found out that an awful lot of his family had differing amounts of Irishness in them. So I think I broke up the McCarron household, and I think they're all fighting over whose dad is who, right? And they're looking at the postman funny. Let's just put it that way. So what I want to ask you is, your second name is Wilde. Now, is it Germanic, Belgian, Dutch extraction of Wilde, or is it the kind of Oscar Fingerloff, Flaherty Wills Wilde variety of Wilde? Where does it come from, Jason?
This is great because I have had to explain this before. So it is pronounced Wilde because it is from my father's side. My father was 100% German, second generation American, and my mother, her father was full-blooded German, and her mother was full-blooded Irish. She came as a little girl from Ireland. So if my Punnett square is accurate, that would make my mom one half Irish and one half German. My father, all German. So I am 3/4 German, 1/4 Irish, and it is German in the last name. So that is why it's not Wild, even though anytime my name seems to be said publicly, it by someone who is unfamiliar with who the heck I am.
Yeah.
It is almost always Wild. So
for the two people on planet Earth who didn't know who you were, you got called Wild. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. You're associated with Oscar. So, I mean, that's quite a mix. I'd say the drinking sessions in the Wilde house are quite savage. I'd say you have some stories there.
They were certainly savage with my ancestors. Not as much with me, but yes, there were some very professional drinkers in my family tree that I'm sure stumbled out of it more than once.
Yeah. Well, listen, we all know your name. You're synonymous with the Packers. There's an awful lot of very experienced writers up there in Green Bay, and an awful lot of very good questions, and an awful lot of really weird occurrences as well, which I'll get onto a little bit later, perhaps in the podcast. But look, with a person that's sort of as large as you are in the Packers world, if I can maybe pull you away from it for a sec and get very personal with you, if I can dive back into what makes you tick in a way, and I've done this to Rob Domofsky. I've done it to Wes Hodkiewicz and all the rest. Now, the thing is, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, you're a Milwaukee native, right?
I did, yes. I grew up in Milwaukee.
Yeah, so, I mean, it sort of would almost seem obvious to people that you grew up in the locale. It's no wonder that you're a diehard Packer fan. But for you, what was your first memory of, being a Packers nut, or your first memory of the Packers as a kid growing up? Was it 3 years old, sort of watching it with your granddad? I mean, how did it all come about for you?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because I think people struggle to understand when I try to explain to them that I'm not a fan, that they don't understand that there is a transition that occurs when you do this, especially as long as I have. And whether it's being able to look behind the curtain and seeing how some people aren't what they're cracked up to be,
Yeah.
or it's seeing how an organization functions, or, whether it's just you deal with good people and you deal with not such great people. It really does become more about telling the stories and covering the journey of a team than it does of, what you're hoping for. Now, I will say that I'm a fan of people.
Yeah.
And there are certain people that I want to see succeed because I'm still human. But I'm definitely a different observer of the Packers than I was. The most vivid memories of my childhood, having been born in 1972, I followed a bunch of Packers teams that weren't very good.
Yeah.
So the ones that stand out, 1980, when Chester Markle kicks a field goal, it's blocked, he catches it and runs it in for a touchdown. I remember watching that game on television. I remember my most vivid memory is probably when I was 11 years old, and for the first time in my life, my parents allowed me to stay up late and watch the entirety of Monday Night Football, and I got to watch the Packers and Washington in that game that the Packers end up winning, and Mark Mosley misses the field goal at the end that would have won it 50-48. Instead, the Packers went 48-47. That's a game that is still in the hallway that leads from the Packers locker room to the field.
Yeah.
That is one of the moments in Lambeau Field history that is hanging on the wall. There aren't many from the 1980s, but that is one of the more signature ones. So, for me, at some point, I stopped wanting to be Lynn Dickey and started wanting to be, something different, something like Bud Lee from the Milwaukee Sentinel, who I read every day. So that's kind of where that shift occurred, and it has never really come back. I am thankful that so many people care so deeply about the Packers that they make my job meaningful. But I don't care about the outcome. I care more about the story.
And so you've sort of alluded to, reading the papers and that's how that came about. And it's very easy to look at your career now and how it ended up and how successful you are. But an awful lot of the journalists that I speak to, I mean, it's such a journey from covering flower shows and all of that type of stuff. So, I mean, for you then, why was it journalism for you? Because you went to the University of Wisconsin, right? And, majored in journalism. Was it with a view of even covering sport or the Packers? Were you sort of just a great storyteller as you were going through your teens and into adolescence? I mean, why journalism, and then why sports journalism as well?
Yeah, I'm one of those lucky people, and I don't know, what percentage of people have this good fortune, but I'm one of them that got to grow up and be what he always wanted to be as a kid. Like, it was in fourth grade that I got my first issue of Sports Illustrated, and that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a sports writer. I loved English classes, I loved writing, and I loved sports. So it was pretty easy. And as I read, I was the kid that every morning, Milwaukee used to be a 2-newspaper town. And so every morning, as I ate my Fruit Loops before I went to St. Paul's Lutheran School, I read the Milwaukee Sentinel sports section. And then every afternoon, when the school bus dropped me off at the stop-and-go convenience store where my bus stop was, I went home and I read the Milwaukee Journal sports section, which was the afternoon paper, before I did my homework.
Yeah.
And so I was lucky to decide kind of what I wanted to be from a very early age, and now I've gotten to live that. I would say, and I say this whenever I talk to journalism classes in colleges or even when I go to high schools and talk, the most important thing to love is not the sports. It's the love of writing and the love of storytelling and really the love of talking to people.